Let's begin with the string control. This is going to be the data to be written to file. In this string, we're just going to write some simple data that needs to be written to a file. Manually entered. On the block diagram, the function we wish to use to write to file is available from the File I/O subpalette. It's here called Write Text File. We can use this in a very simple manner. We can simply connect the text up. If we look at the online help to see what our inputs are, we see we have a prompt, the ability to choose what the file path prompt says. We have the ability to enter in a file, but notice how in brackets it says use dialog box. So if we do not enter a file name, it's going to prompt us to choose the file name of the file we want to use. Also, it returns as its output a ref num. This is a number indicating the file which has been opened, whether or not it's been canceled, and also it has the standard error in and error out. Even though we've only connected the string control to the text input of this function, we can actually run this VI in its current state. When we do so, it's going to prompt for us to choose where we're going to save the file. Because we haven't told it explicitly where to write the file, it needs to ask us to choose a location and a file name. So here we've got a location. We're going to choose sample text file.txt as our example, and we see that it's proceeded. So this is the most basic form of writing to a text file. We can become much more sophisticated in the way we do this. First, let's use a path control instead of allowing the file function to ask us where we want to save the file. We can use a path control instead of having the dialog box pop up automatically. So if we go to our string and path palette, choose File Path Control. Let's browse for a location. Might as well choose the same file name we picked before. Make this a little bigger so that we can see the entire path. And this time when we connect this path up, when we run the VI, it doesn't prompt us for a dialog box. It just proceeds and saves the file. Let's talk a little bit more about this ref num out. Many file operations, when used in their most basic form, such as what we've done here, take a path as their input, and they perform all of the functions that are required to be done on that path. For example, this file needs to be created, data needs to be written to it, and the file needs to be closed. We can take better control of all of those functionalities by manually opening the file, manually writing to the file, and manually closing to the file. The situations where we might wish to do that are where we need to write multiple pieces of data to the file, perhaps not all from one string, or perhaps not all at the same time. The act of opening and closing a file takes time, and if we have an application where we're continuously saving to a file, we may wish to open it, leave it open, and write to it in parts. In that situation, we need to manually open the file before we write to the file, and we need to close it afterwards. That's the situation where we use the ref num. Let's proceed with that example. Also available from the File I/O subpalette are Open, Create, Replace File and Close File. Notice that the Open, Create, Replace file takes as its input a file path, but returns as its output a ref num. This ref num is the same type of information which comes out of the write to text file. If we were instead to disconnect the path input here, rearrange the function slightly, place the open file first, connect the file path to it, and then instead of connecting the path directly to the write to text file, we can now connect a ref num. And of course, connect the refnum out of the write to also the close function. In this case, what will happen is the first function will open the file, the second will write to it, and the third will close it. Also notice that this write-to-text file is a polymorphic VI. Previously, it took a file path as its input. Now, it takes a refnum. In either case, it handles it properly. The benefit of this is you may have noticed previously when I ran the VI, I chose the same file name as that which I had the first time. It would be natural to ask the question whether that file was overwritten, whether it was appended to, whether it was destroyed. When we manually open the file, we have greater choice over how it behaves. For example, if we have a constant created for the operation input, we see we have a variety of choices here. Whether to open the file, replace the file, create it, open or create it, and most importantly, replace or create with confirmation. What this does, it will prompt us if the file already exists, making sure that we're aware of the fact that the file is going to be overwritten. We can also specify, again, the prompt, whether or not we're creating read access or write access. If we create a constant for that input, we can see we choose read-write, read-only, or write-only. We'll leave it as read-write. And of course, it also returns whether or not the input was canceled. So let's handle this properly. Let's also connect the errors, chain the errors up properly between the functions, create an indicator on the error output, and further, recall that there's a canceled output from the first function. Let's put a case around the rest of our code so that if the function has been canceled, we don't try and write to an invalid path. So we see here, if the canceled is true, then we do not wish to do the write. So we need to switch this, make this the false case, and if in the true case, again, the canceled case, we just want to pass the error right through. Now, let's run this again, this time again using the same path. See, notice how it warns us that the file already exists and asks whether we want to replace it. If we say cancel, nothing happens. If we run it and we say go ahead and replace it, then it does. The next topic is reading from text files. Let's modify our previous example and turn it into a read from text file example. We'll just do a save as, open additional copy, and call this read from text example. So we have some simple modifications to make. Instead of a string control, since we're going to be reading from it, we're going to change this to an indicator. This is data, and this is data read from file. The structure of our VI remains basically the same. We still want to open the file, but instead of replace or create, we're going to choose open. We can leave the access input as read-write, or we can choose read-only. And of course, we need to replace our write-to-text file with read from text file. So naturally, our previously connected control is no longer connected in the right place. Notice how the functionality of the read from text file is almost the same as the write to, except of course that the output is the text. So let's just move our indicator to the right hand side, connect the text out, and connect it up. And perhaps in the true case, we can create a constant that just says canceled. So now if we were to browse for a file and select the same file that we created in the previous step, next, when we run this, we see that we have exactly the same data which we stored in the previous part.